Hi, I'm Zibby Owens, and I am the host of this podcast, Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. I am also a newly minted USA Today best-selling author of the novel Blank. I've created a whole community of book lovers around this podcast, a publishing company, reading retreats, a bookstore, and more. Learn more at zibbymedia.com or follow me on social at Zibby Owens or join the community at Zibby Readers. Denise Dorrance is the author of POLAR VORTEX, a family memoir, which, by the way, is a graphic novel, and also, by the way, was really deeply affecting and moving, and I really recommend you take an hour and just read this book. American-born cartoonist and illustrator Denise Dorrance worked in magazines in New York for 12 years, including at Cosmopolitan under Helen Gurley Brown, before moving to London in 1993. Her cartoons have run for decades in many publications, including The Mail on Sunday UK. POLAR VORTEX is her first graphic novel. In the UK, it was shortlisted for the 2020 Myriad First Graphic Novel Competition and won the LD Comics 2020 Rosalind B. Penfold Prize. Enjoy. Welcome, Denise. Thank you so much for coming on Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books to discuss POLAR VORTEX, a graphic novel.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
This is it my only graphic novel? It's definitely one of the only ones. And you came highly recommended by Miranda Cowley Heller, who wrote The Paper Palace, which is one of my all-time favorites. So anything she said, I was like, yes. And then I read your book and oh my gosh, I couldn't put it down. It was so immersive and so powerful. And like, I felt so almost dysregulated after reading it, like so sad, almost like I had gone through grief myself, anyway, it was so powerful and you did a fabulous job. So I'm really glad I read it and I'm glad you wrote it.
Thank you so much. It's a book you can read in one sitting. I think that's it's nice to get a book and really have a whole week to read it, although maybe it takes you 1 hour, I don't know. But I've kind of said it's like watching a film that takes about that amount of time, and it's that kind of experience.
It's like a multimedia emotion factory.
Do you have it in your life at all? Has this touched you in any way of your...
It hasn't, but it's a fear, right? It's like, so maybe we should back up, and why don't you tell listeners what POLAR VORTEX is about? And it is not about a weather system necessarily, although that plays a part.
It does, yeah. No, it's very important weather system actually, because that became a symbol for the dementia that I'm going through. So it's a personal story, although I have found once I started talking about it, it's a subject that touches so many people, even universally. So while mine is set in America, I think it's happening everywhere. This elderly care, dementia, how families survive that nuclear bomb that goes off in the family. And so it's based on my own experience of my elderly mom who fell at home in Iowa, and I was in London. And I rushed back to help her, thinking it was going to be a few weeks. And it turned out to be almost 2 months that I spent with her. And while she was sort of deteriorating in dementia, and it became very clear she wasn't going to go home, which is a big theme in the story, home.
Yes.
I was quickly thrown into the situation where I had to then make a decision for her future. Not just me, but there was my sister, but we were not speaking. So that's another layer to the story. Siblings fall out when parents aren't there as leadership, really. Mm-hmm. So I was thrown into this kind of polar vortex of having to navigate my mom's future. And it just, nothing felt right. None of the choices felt right, but we had to make one. And so the plot starts with that fall of my mom at home and me rushing to help her, and then follows the intense but relatively short journey that I had to make. But it was her entire future that was being decided. So, and I kept a diary, and that's the only reason I could actually write this book, because I kept a diary while I was there, sitting next to my mom in the care home or sitting home alone in my family home. And that diary helped me access the intense kind of feelings and the funny things that happened too. I probably wouldn't have remembered with such intensity, but I had this diary with all the notes that I'd kept, which I picked up when I started writing the book. So it was really helpful.
Well, the combination of this new landscape that you had to navigate and bringing your own thoughts and feelings and life into it, right? You're not just, you don't have all the time in the world. Like you have your own family and you have your own life and job and everything. And yet,
Right.
when something happens to a parent, you have to stop them. Like, who else? And I think that was part of one of the very sort of lonely feelings of the story is like, if not you, who? Like, what happens when our parents get older? And of course, it has to be you. But also, what
Mhm.
about them? And what about, I know at certain times your mom was trying to advocate for herself and saying, well, I don't want to leave my home. But then the next minute, not knowing who she was or who you were, So
Right.
how do you honor their wishes and yet make sure they're okay? And then all the insurance stuff and what is even possible and the nice home versus the not nice home. And oh my gosh.
Oh, it was terrible. I mean, I don't wish it on anyone, I mean, when I started the book, I would, sort of start talking about what the subject was, and within a second, people would jump in and start telling their own story of their own experience, and so I think it does boil down to just a very common story that
Yeah.
people have to deal with this issue of the end of their parents' life, really. And I think, the insurance, I mean, it was very important to the plot, but it's a really boring subject. And so I had fun kind of, the humor kind of making it humorous, telling the story of my mother's insurance situation, which meant she had very little money to give to her care, her private care.
And even though they had been putting money away in this like
Yeah,
insurance sort of scam, if you will, where, their whole life they were putting aside money and then it
right.
comes time and it cares for like 2 hours or something crazy.
Yeah, 2 hours a day, which doesn't even begin to cover it. And we had help. We relied on the church and friends,
Hmm.
but that's it's not enough in the day. And then as the daughter or son, you just want to go and fill that gap,
Yep.
but that's impossible. It
And there
really
was
is.
also you really highlighted, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. You just
No.
really highlighted how much higher functioning she was at home, right? Like she
Yeah,
got right back into her house and could putter around and do all the normal things. And yet when she was in one of these new environments was just sort of like in a wheelchair, just sitting there or
yeah.
confused. And I think that every so often you had this fear expression on her face in the evenings, which, oh my gosh, got to me so much when like just to have your parents be afraid like that and confused. Oh,
Yeah, yeah. And my whole thing was I wanted to keep my mom at home. That
hmm.
was my
Yep.
plan. And that became an issue between him and my sister, who wanted really, and with all love and care, wanted my mom to be put into a nursing home or a care home that could look after her. And so, while my mom was highly functioning at home, but was she? You see, I didn't
Hmm.
really, I was here.
Yep.
I called her every day and we spoke and I could check in. But increasingly, she would start to tell really weird stories about people in the basement and, strange things that were happening in there. And I do think being at home was for her the safest place. And when you move people with dementia, they're very discombobulated. It takes a while for them to settle. And then she settled in the care home
Hmm.
eventually. But that's a whole other issue with insurance. And yeah, it's quite messy. It's
And
messy.
where is she now?
She died.
Oh no.
Yeah, I'm sorry. But she was 93. She lived a really, really full, long life. And she died at home, with my sister. She moved to live with my sister on the West
Yeah.
Coast.
How much longer after the events of the book?
About a year and a half, she
Wow.
was with my sister. And what was really awful and what really inspired me to write this graphic novel was that when my mom died, it was during COVID. And so we had no funeral, no memorial. There was nothing to honor her life. And that was awful. I just thought it was unfair. And so the book really is in her honor. It was to celebrate her life, really, which we couldn't do when she died.
Ugh. I was very, very close with my grandmother, and she had dementia at the end, although not to the extent of your mom, and was in a home, but she had like a blast in the place. And both my grandmothers went to homes and like had this whole new social life and men trying to
Wow.
date them. And like, they were like, belles of the ball in different places.
Yeah.
But so that was fun for them.
Doesn't have to be a terrible experience.
Yeah. But still, having to move. I mean, moving is one of the most stressful things at any age, right? And you just, just having to give up that level of control, and, you spend your life trying to figure out what you like, and you're, like making rooms look, inviting. And then to think that like at the very end, you have to end up in some like terrible room that is not even of your choosing. Anyway.
Right. With a little shelf that you have a couple of photographs. And I mean, it's a lesson for what we think's important and what we hold on to.
Yes, very true. Well, I'm so sorry for your loss, and your dad and your brother, and oh my gosh, you've had so much loss in your life. It must have just brought up all of everything. And maybe could you talk about your brother had a brain tumor and then an operation, and he wasn't the same after? Tell me what happened.
Yeah. I was very close to my brother. He was 8 years older, and I really admired him. And he got a brain tumor when he was at college, and then had surgery to remove. It was benign, so he had surgery, but the recovery was very long and slow. And it was a complicated surgery, so he really, really wasn't the same. And that reduced his life. He wasn't disabled, but it just reduced how so my mom looked after him. Really, he lived independently, but he never really launched. But had a wonderful life and was a great artist. And so I don't look back with sadness really at any of that. Actually, I find that, I mean, death is part of our living. And I had a very close relationship with my brother anyway, up until the end, actually.
I'm so sorry. Oh my gosh.
I'm sorry to make you sad.
No, I'm sad because I am feeling you. It's not, I just.
I know, you're empathetic. It's what we do on the planet. We empathize with each other, of course.
And the one drawing where you had almost like the ghost of your dad next to your mom. Oh.
Yeah. Still, I mean, I haven't actually read it for a while because I get very emotional when
I bet.
No, I wrote it. I get quite emotional. Yeah, it brings up a lot of things.
Tell me a little bit about your whole other, like your career up until this book in comics and drawing and your, journal, just all of it. Tell me about all of that.
Yeah. Well, so I had a completely different career until I had my son. So my career previous to having my baby, quite late in life, I was 38, was in photography, and I was an agent, and New York, and quite a fast, fun life. And then I moved to London and had my baby, my son. And when he was sort of old enough to understand, I started drawing with him. And those became cartoons. And those were then, seen by magazine editors and started to be published. And so suddenly, to my surprise, I was a cartoonist, and I had to really understand it. But I grew up really in a house. There was a humor in my house. My mom used to write poems that were quite humorous for our birthdays. So I think there was something bubbling inside me, probably always, that I would be able to write funny cartoons. So I developed a character called Mimi, who was a fashionista mom, a New York kind of international mom, but she had a baby, and the baby fit into her life rather than the other way around. Like a lot of parents, I think, you just naturally sacrifice for your child, for your children. And she refused to do that. So she was fun, and she ran in newspapers and magazines for about 10 years. I had a column in a newspaper in London. And then I finished with her, and then I took a break. And then this event kind of happened in my life. And I'd always wanted to write a graphic novel, but they're difficult. They're really difficult, and they take a long time. So I never had the story that I really wanted to tell. So it kind of just beautifully happened at the same time, my mother's story and my real desire to tell it in a different way. I couldn't do it as a comic book. I don't think of this as a comic book, really.
No.
Not is it? Yeah. I call it an illustrated story. Because I think I really do want to reach people who might shy away from what they think of as a comic book, because I've tried very hard to, illustrate it in a way that's not, traditional comic book format, squares and bubbles. And, it's more flowy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I feel like I've
yes, you answered my question. It's funny. My mom, her grandma name is Mimi. That's funny.
Is it?
I'm gonna have to. Yeah. Did you ever compile
Yeah, there's a book. There's a book called "It's All About Mimi."
Oh my god, that's so
self,
perfect.
I love. We self-published it. Do you remember Kickstarter?
Yes.
Yeah. So we did a Kickstarter campaign when it was that was very hot and happening, and that's how we published Mimi, the book.
Wow. And where is it? It's on Amazon. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I am gonna buy her like 10 copies. That's perfect. She'll like put them all over the place. That's so funny. So perfect. Oh my gosh. I love that. So having navigated this sort of difficult terrain, which many people tread, and coming out sort of with the feelings of sort of loss and, just the craziness of the experience and, being in it like that. For people who are just starting this journey or who are also going through it or whatever, are there any things that made it at all easier for you along the way that you would recommend, even if it's as simple as a cup of tea at the end of the day or something? Like what helped you through?
That's a great question. And I'm not an expert in any way. And I just experienced it, this very small personal story with my mom. But I think the takeaway from me was she wanted me close. And maybe it could be anyone. Maybe it was just someone being close to her. I think dementia is quite frightening. It's scary in your mind when you know it's happening. It doesn't just hit. It's gradual and it comes and goes. It's some days are good, some days are very bad. So, for example, when I flew with my mother, I took her to live with my sister. Mm-hmm. And on the plane, she was really freaking. Very disoriented, of course. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do. And I just took her hand. I held her hand. And it just calmed her down. And I know it seems really simple, but that sort of attention and affection, I think, is worth anything else you can do for someone in dementia. I think just being there for them quietly, they just know you're there, and holding them. That would be my advice. You're going to make me cry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh. I don't want it to be sad. I don't want it to be a sad book. I feel like there was so much joy and humor. My mother had a great sense of humor. And I really tried very hard to keep that in the book. I think dark things in life, there is a sense of humor you can fold into it to make it just a little bit lighter.
Yes.
It's not laugh out loud, but it's nuanced. It's like there's a poignancy, but it's lots of different feelings come up.
Yes.
In intense moments, if that makes sense.
Like how to buy suitably warm clothes in Iowa in the middle of a snowstorm. That was funny.
Why do you think I worked that out? How did I not? I was in such a panic when I left. I think I literally didn't think. And I didn't know this polar vortex was coming. Have you experienced one? Do they come your way?
They just had one. Yeah, we just had one.
So I couldn't find the shovels in the house. I did literally go to Target and try and find, the right gear, because people are very, in the Midwest, people are walking around in serious winter gear.
Yes. Well, it was not exactly an advertisement for Iowa, the balmy shores of Iowa. I was like, oh my gosh.
Lovely summers.
Lovely summers. Oh, that's so funny. No, I don't mean to say that the book itself is only sad. It's not. That's what makes it so interesting, right? It's the full range of the human emotions that go along with difficult situations and being in it, and, the good and the bad, and getting to know your mom. And, those couple scenes, there was a nurse attendant who came in at one point who said, "I'm here, you're safe, I'm with you." And then she ended up saying that to her, a girl across the way. And this is good advice, not just for dementia. This is like when anyone's going through anything, the power of sitting there, holding their hands and listening. I mean, for all the books and advice and stuff, that's really, the crux of it is that we have to be there for each other through all the hard stuff we go through. And that helps.
No, I know it's very, very simple. I think.
And that's not a text message. You know what I mean?
No,
Like, it's not
right.
an email. It's not sending flowers. It's being there in person, and doing that
Yeah.
is a lot more important.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard. It's, of course, people don't live, right next door to their parents, and all that guilt. But when you can, or for anyone, as you say, it's share the love.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, what else are you working on these days?
Taking a break because it nearly, it was quite an intense period writing, physically even. Just I was very bad about there's this sort of the rules you must follow, that you must take a break and don't sit for 2 hours and write. But I would sit for 5 hours, and because you get, well, you must experience that as well. I mean, are you disciplined about taking a break while you're sitting writing?
I didn't even know I was supposed to take a break. I don't take breaks at all. Sometimes I sit here like the whole day, and aside from going to the bathroom, like I wouldn't get up like ever. I'm like, I've moved. There was one day my husband flew to LA and got to the house and like did all this stuff, and I was like, I have not moved. Maybe I got up once.
Give you some advice as an older woman.
Yes.
It's not good for you. Take a break. There's something called the Pomodoro method where you I don't know. Yeah, you write for 20, take 5-minute break. Right, I know it's impossible, but I would like to do another graphic novel. I definitely would. I'm not sure yet. I might revisit my New York days. We'll see. It's this is a hard one to follow. This has done so well beyond my expectations. I'm going to see what happens. I'm still happily enjoying the success of this, actually.
Well, I think you should do something about your son.
Oh,
I would like to
my
read
son.
that. Yeah.
Oh,
getting older, going away.
Yeah.
I don't know,
Right.
all of that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's another form of loss in a way. Like as your child gets older, I don't know, those complicated feelings. I feel like there must have been a time where you felt like he went to college, or it was, I don't know, some moments where you had to let go more. I feel like that's another really relatable thing that a lot of people go through.
It's tricky writing memoir. You have to be careful.
Yes, that's true.
Protecting others and making sure it's okay.
Yeah.
But in this way, I had, well, not because my mother wasn't there, but what was great about doing this story as a graphic novel is that I could suddenly leave facts and just be surreal, and kind of launch into a game show, or, I didn't have to like literally follow what had actually happened.
Yes.
So you can play with the story.
You can put, Zoolander in your book and it's okay.
Right. You need to contact Ben Stiller.
Oh, did he say it was okay?
No, I haven't told him.
Oh, gosh. I was wondering about this, right? Well.
Yeah, well, I hope so. I hope he likes it.
Yeah. Ben Stiller, if you're listening, it was used in a really great way. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. Thank you, Ben.
Well, Denise, thank you so much for your story. I'm actually writing a graphic novel with my daughter. Not
really?
This time. Yeah, she's we hired an illustrator of a book that she loves, like a real, his name's Mike White, and she loves his books about Melly Bean. Anyway, we wrote a middle grade novel that wasn't really being picked up. I was trying to sell it, and she only reads graphic novels, and she kept being like, let's make it a graphic novel. So we were in the process of adapting it, which is quite fun, and illustrating, one chapter at a time. We send him the chapters, and he's doing them. So she was just picking out the characters' clothes yesterday and changing the colors that he wanted to use. And she's like, no, those colors don't match. Like, why don't we try this? So
because it's a shame she can't illustrate it.
She really could. She's an amazing artist. She really is. She does art all the time. That's all she does all day is,
Why isn't she doing it?
I don't know. She didn't want to.
It's a lot. But maybe you could put some of her drawings in it. Like give her, I think that would be interesting to have her drawings in there as well.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a dream a character has, or something that she could.
Yeah.
A little event.
She could illustrate. This is so it's called Diary Hoppers, about a group of girls who have the power to go into their mom's diaries. So, and go back in time. It's not about time travel, but it's so you like learn more about your parents. Thank you. I think it's like a great idea. But anyway,
that's great.
So, but now what she could do is she could do the diary itself, and we could have little pages from that. Nice. Yeah, I love it. Oh my gosh, I'm going to ask her to do it today. Okay. Yeah, she'll love it.
Really cool.
So
Oh,
this is good. We'll just keep giving each other ideas
yes.
and,
Great.
checking in.
I like it. Yeah, that's cool. I love it.
Anyway, okay, Denise, thank you so much. Yeah, thank you. It was really a pleasure.
Thank you. Lovely, lovely to chat with you.
Thanks for listening to Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. If you love it, please leave a review and follow us on social at Zibby Owens and at Zibby Readers.